Hey scholars, so in the last couple of videos, we started working with GUI applications or building our own GUI applications in Pascal using Lazarus, or rather Object Pascal, as I explained in the first video. We did our Hello Basics program. So I'm going to open up Lazarus, and as I mentioned in the previous video where we did this animation, what we're going to do in this video is do another version or GUI version of our guessing game. So I want you to go up here to project and then click new application. Okay. All right. So, as I mentioned before, we're working in a unit as part of the larger program. We get for free these things that are imported, these other units. So I'm going to put a comment up here about what we're going to do. So we are creating guessing game 2.0. And then this version is going to be a little bit different because, of course, it's going to be a GUI. We're going to add difficulty. So if you were in our sessions or if you watched the video on the guessing game, one of the things I asked you guys to try to do was add difficulty. Of course, I gave it to you as an assignment in session, but it was in the description of that video. So we're going to actually add difficulty to this program. And doing that, I want to show you how case statements work in Object Pascal. Okay, so let's move over to the form here and let's start designing the form for our guessing game. I am going to get a button first, and let's put it down here. And I want an edit field similar to our Hello Basic program. Okay. And a new component that we haven't used before is a label. So I want to label. Drag that and put it here. You'll notice that unlike the button in the edit, my dragging it didn't really change the size because over here in the properties panel, you need to change the font if you want it to be bigger because the component works differently than the other two components. You can change the location of it by using top and left. To actually change the size, you would have to click here in font and then change the size. All right, for this form, we are going to have two procedures. We're going to have a procedure for when someone clicks on the button, and we're also going to have a procedure for when the form is created. So I'm going to click on the form here. As I mentioned also in the favorite section, things that are most commonly used, there's OnCreate here. So I can click these three dots to create that function, or you can just click anywhere on the form that you don't have another component and it will create that procedure for you to add the code. We go back over here to the form and I want a procedure for the button as well. So I'm just going to click on it. Okay. All right. Inside of the private section of the class for the form, I am also going to add a couple more things. I am going to add a couple variables. So secretNumber is going to be an integer. As I mentioned with the animation program, I'm putting it here in private so that it is available to all the procedures or functions that we might add that are related to the form, but I'm not making it a var because I only want it available to components of the form. Okay, so that's a variable we're going to store our secret number. We're going to have two more variables here called minVal and maxVal. So when the user chooses the difficulty, the way that we'll set the difficulty is making the range of numbers they have to choose from higher or lower. You're also going to change how many tries they get. So we're going to create a variable called maxTries, and then we're going to create a variable called tries, which will store the maximum number of tries they get for a given difficulty, and tries will keep track of how many times they have tried. Then we're going to create a Boolean variable called gameOver, which will hold whether the game is over, and the game will be over either after they've exhausted their tries or they chose the right number so that we can reset our game. Okay. And speaking of resetting our game, we are actually going to create a procedure for resetting our game. So I want to define that here in the private section as well. We're going to implement it elsewhere, but we'll define it here in the private section, call it ResetGame. And we're going to create a procedure called ChooseDifficulty. All right, so first, let's get down to the FormCreate procedure, since that's the first thing that's going to run. And what we're going to do is we're just going to hand this off to the ResetGame procedure that we'll create, okay? And you'll see why we're doing this momentarily. So down here, what we are going to do is create that procedure. Remember, this procedure is part of the T-form, so we're going to T-form1. Since we defined it earlier, you can actually see it in the list here. So if I do reset, it'll autocomplete for me, okay? Let me begin the block here. And in this procedure, the first thing that I'm going to do is actually choose the difficulty when we reset. So I'm going to run that procedure. So we're going to say choose difficulty. Let's make sure I'm spelling it the same way. Yes. All right. So before I go on in the reset game procedure, let's define this since we're calling it first in that procedure. So again, procedure T form 1. Wait for a second, then you can to choose difficulty. Okay, I'm going to do a begin. Inside of this, we're going to have some local variables that are only available to choose difficulty. I'm going to have a variable called S, which is going to be a string, and a variable called ch, which is going to be a char, which is basically just one character. Okay, all right. So now inside of the procedure, let's write some code. So we are going to have S be set to an input box. The way the input box works, you get the you have a caption, you have a prompt. Caption is basically what's on top of the input box, prompt, and a default string. So the caption we want is difficulty. The prompt is, I'm going to move this over a little bit because this line is going to get long. Choose for easy, for normal, H for hard, okay? And we're going to default to N, okay? We don't have to design this. This is something that we get free from the dialogues unit that we imported here. And honestly, I think that we have enough code now that actually I can show you what it looks like if we compile here, okay? So we get this box and so we get this input box and you can put in whatever you want here. So I'm going to actually stop it and let's add some more code. We need to make sure that the input that the player puts in is valid. So we're going to say if S is equal to nothing, and S is going to be N, okay? We also want to UpCase their response. So say that, and we're in so we have a function that actually does that for us, and that comes from the sysutils unit that we imported. So here, I'm going to use our ch variable. So ch is going to be set to UpCase. This is the function that I was talking about of S1. I haven't really talked about arrays or list inside of Pascal, but one peculiarity compared to other C-type languages or languages like Python and JavaScript that have some relationship to the C programming language is that arrays in Pascal start at 1, or they can start at 1. They really can start at any number. And usually you'll see a lot of code when someone is working with an array starting at 1. You can start at 0, and all the code that we will write when we are using arrays start at 0. But when you're referencing the characters within a string, the first character is always 1, not 0. So in case the player happens to type in easy because they don't understand the prompt, instead of just E, we're just getting the first character of the string. And then we're upcasing just to make sure that it's the right case. Speaking of case, instead of using a if statement to check their input, we are going to use a case statement. And a case statement is best if you know the exact inputs that you're looking for. It actually also compiles a little bit quicker, so it can make your program a little bit quicker than an if statement in many cases. So we're going to say case of ch of, and then you put the different cases. So E is the first case, and I'm going to put this in a block. So we're going to say begin, end, and I'm going to set a couple variables here. I'm going to set the minVal, which we defined earlier in the private section of the form class. minVal, we're going to say is going to be 1, maxVal is going to be 10, and maxTries is going to be 7. Okay, so that's if they input E. Let's also do one for H. And instead of typing all this over again, I'm just going to copy this and paste. Okay, for hard, we're going to go all the way up to 50. We're only going to give them 5, okay? So just like with a if statement, you can have an else with a case. So we want a catch-all for everything else that could have been entered. So say they didn't put in easy, normal, or hard, or E, N, or H. They put something else in. We wouldn't necessarily catch it as a wrong response here, because say they put in their name and their name is Alice. We'd get an A and we would upcase it here, but we want to catch everything else. We want to set to normal. So E, it's going to be easy, hard, or it's going to be normal. All right. And this is going to be our default. Move this over so that it's lining up. Not necessary, but just makes the code look nicer. Default is going to be normal. Let's just comment. All right. And here again, like I said, I want to type this again. So I'm just going to copy and paste. They will get 6 tries at normal level, and we would go up to 20 at normal. Okay. So that's the choose the difficulty procedure. Now we are going to jump back down to the reset procedure and continue working on that. All right. I'm going to pause here and we're going to continue in the next video.